There's always been a debate about realism in games, and what's interesting is there was a time when realism had an upper limit, and that upper limit was extremely low. Maybe it was 16 colors. Maybe it was an extremely low resolution, and everything had to be handcrafted artwork, and there was not even really 3D to speak of. Games were very simple back in the day, so every time there was a step forward in realism, people got really excited. I remember when I started playing SimCity, there weren't any 3D cars on the roads. It was just a animation that was static, of little pixel dots moving on a street that would kind of simulate the appearance of cars. So you could look at a glance and kind of know, okay, there's cars on that street. But other than just basically being an icon that had an animation on it, it really wasn't, there weren't any real cars. You couldn't like see someone driving down the road in SimCity Classic or in SimCity 2000. Then we started to see realistic cars make their way into SimCity 3000 when that game came out. But it was still kind of more of a static animation. Like cars would travel around on the streets, but they kind of despawned and spawned in sort of at random. It wasn't really like you could exactly find one particular citizen and then follow them around to see where they were going or anything like that. It just wasn't really, it wasn't like that. And then we got SimCity 4 and traffic simulation got better. And then, of course, as time has gone on, Sims have gotten more and more realistic. And now, if you play City Skylines 2, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can see people on the roads, you can see them going to work, you can see where they live, and it's pretty impressive. But with that added realism now, there's increasingly a sense that is not good enough. It doesn't please us enough. And sometimes we find ourselves going back to things that are not as realistic because they feel more real. And the reason for that is because some of those less realistic experiences maybe have a better art style. Maybe they focus on the gameplay elements that actually are more meaningful to the player. And that's that's something which is kind of a strange dichotomy, because you would think that if you make something super realistic, it's going to be a better experience. But that's not necessarily true. Sometimes going for something that's a bit less realistic but more meaningful, which focuses on a more artistic and thoughtful interpretation of a thing, is going to be more special. No Man's Sky is an example of this that comes to mind. It's a really amazing space simulation game where you can travel to any planet, you can go anywhere, you can get in your spaceship and go sail out of the atmosphere and go land on a foreign planet somewhere. You can discover new things, and it's pretty much an infinite sandbox. The only problem is, like, once you've seen a little bit of it, you've kind of seen all of it, Like it's just a procedurally generated variation on a theme. It doesn't feel special. And maybe that's a good way to simulate space, because outer space would be probably like that. It would be lonely, it would be vast, and every planet probably would look more or less like every other. And yet, the reason why we play games and have all of these positive feelings surrounding gaming is because it connects us to something personal. If you take away that sense of meaning, then it doesn't really matter how realistic the game is, because it's going to feel empty. So I think it's just important to kind of take a step back from our desire to talk about realism all the time and focus on experiences that feel real. It's not about being the most realistic. You know, like in Cities Skylines 2 today, if you play that game, you'll see, like, you know, you can see how many people have pet dogs in their apartments or houses, which is really cool. But then, you know, is that something that needs to be simulated? And like, not every single thing needs to be baked into the game's simulation. You know, some things can just be left to the imagination. I think it's interesting when I play civilization games, they've evolved so much over the last number of years. And yet, the crazy thing is, every time a new civilization game comes out, Civ 7 just recently came out, I wind up feeling like I'm playing the same game. It just doesn't really feel all that much different. The magic of it was somewhere around Civilization 2. Now we have Civ 7. And yet, all of those new steps forward don't really add all that much to the core experience that we fell in love with many years ago. And the reason for that is because when we played those games a while ago, they felt real. A big part because of the art and the love that went into them and our imaginations. And now today, they just feel more realistic. And it's kind of like the difference between pursuing the sciences and pursuing spirituality. One is all about the nuts and bolts of how everything works, but that alone doesn't really explain to us why it matters. And it's those rare few experiences that truly scratch that itch of answering artistically why it matters. Those are the ones that really feel special. Those are the ones that really stick with you. You know, I talked in a previous video about how Genshin Impact was like that for me when it came out and I started playing it for the first time. And if I was going to explain, you know, why is that? Like, what is it about Genshin Impact that really is a special game to me? Like, why have I liked it? Why has it had this staying power? And, you know, part of it, it's the philosophy behind the game. At the core of Genshin Impact, being an Eastern developed game, there's a sort of a Taoism, an Eastern philosophy that is baked into the lore of the game. For example, every quest is designed to make you feel maybe a little bit more mindful. Maybe the monsters are designed to be not necessarily purely evil. The characters are designed to be reasonably sympathetic. Even if they're not good characters, we root for them because we come to an understanding that they have their reasons for what they do. It's a game that's very much focused on a sort of a redemptive element. It's not about dark things, really. It's not about vengeance. It's not about necessarily being extremely powerful. It's about being the right kind of character and trying to do your part to make the world the right kind of a place. It's just kind of, it manages to be a bit of a feel-good game. And a big part of that is because it is rooted in something a bit adjacent, I would say, to Gnosticism and some of those Eastern philosophies that focus less on winning or being right and more on finding harmony and balance in all things. We see that with the elements in the game. Like every power is based off of one of the earth elements: earth, wind, fire, and so on. So the game is just a bit different because you can tell that the artists, the devs who created it, put a lot of effort into putting a certain ethos and worldview and attitude into the art that they created and into the world they designed. So it's not just a game world intending to deliver, if you will, realism. It's trying to bring to life artistry. And that love of the arts is what makes the game feel so special. It's the reason why if you go to an anime convention, you see a bunch of people dressing up like Genshin Impact characters or, things like that. It's all that extra stuff, the things that make people feel like they're part of something special enough that they would say, well, it's more than just a game. And I think that's what gets lost on people who say, well, this game has better graphics or something like that. But the question is, but is it really a game that feels real to you? And if it doesn't feel real to you, if it doesn't speak to you on some level, then it kind of misses the mark, even if it does have some aspects of it that are extremely realistic. Star Citizen is maybe a good example of that. It's a space sim game which has raked in a great deal of money as the developers try to turn it into a finished product, but it winds up looking like it's sort of like a scammy cash grab kind of a situation. The game stays in development for many years, never really managed to make it out of early access. And it's beautiful. If you ever look at the videos of Star Citizen gameplay footage, it looks beautiful. But if you try to say, well, what is it? What is it that really makes this game special? Like, what is it about the game world that's amazing? What is it that speaks to you? What is it that makes it feel exciting? I don't know. Like, I've seen various gameplay of it, and it looks pretty, but it doesn't look special. And when I think about the things that really have been special to me, again, I go back to the experiences, not to necessarily graphical fidelity. So I think it's important to just put this in perspective and think about, what is it that speaks to you, and focus on those things, because those things are what matter, not just that there's a game that looks really good and they've got amazing, God rays or Unreal Engine 5 or something like that. It's not about that. It's about that sense that you can escape into a world and feel like you have a direct influence on interacting with it in a way that feels good. Like I've always liked the combat in Genshin Impact. And if I was going to say, well, what game has the most realistic combat? Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say Genshin Impact is going to be at the top of the list by any measure, but it just feels good to play the game, whether you're a good good at it or not. It feels impactful and it feels enjoyable, and it's just elegant when you play it. So I like it. And so it's not about whether it's the best or the most realistic. It's just about whether it is enjoyable. And sometimes I think that we don't ask enough the question, is something an enjoyable experience? And we ask the question, is it technically a good experience? And there are certainly times in life, in games, in business, and many different situations where something can be really, really good on paper, but then when you actually put it into practice, it's not really that great. That's how you wind up with those games that you saw a trailer for, it looked really amazing. You're like, I have to have that. I got to try it. And then it's in your library. You're like, I don't know. I was that way with Enjoy. It was a new game, fairly recently came out, and it's all about kind of like The Sims, basically, right? And it's got beautiful graphics and Unreal Engine, and I thought that's a really pretty game. I've got to try it. But then the crazy thing is, I boot into it, I look at it, I make a character, I play around for a minute, and then I'm like, all right, I've seen it. I don't know that I really care too much about it right now. Maybe I'll get to it some other time. And I think, then you look at some of these more established franchises that people have loved, like The Sims or something, and are they the best? No, like they infuriate people. People get frustrated by them all the time. But people love those games because there's something about them that just draws folks in. Even if they're not technically the best, there's something about them because they feel real to the people who've put many, many hours into them. The things that matter in life are going to be the things you love, not the things that are the best looking on paper. So make a point to focus on things that you love, and don't worry too much about all of the other shiny things that make themselves apparent along the way. Life has loveliness to sell, as someone said once. Buy it and never count the cost. And as always, thank you so much for watching.